to do this and for you to give your time to do this also.
I just can tell you, I'm so proud. I'm so honored to meet you here, and thank you for
Um,
everything. Okay, so
yeah.
how are you doing? How are you?
Um, well, with everything that's going on, it's so wonderful to be able to find that online therapy and online training, including EFT with individuals, which I've already done a training in that online. It really is quite effective. It works. So
Nice.
I feel really fortunate to be able to meet with my clients, do supervision,
Mhm,
and teach EFIT online and
mhm.
help therapists learn even now, which is what I'll be doing for you in Germany in September.
Mhm.
The same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. How?
um, that's so lovely. It's so lovely to have you in Germany. So, if your younger self, like 2 or 3 weeks younger self, what would you tell your younger self what you've learned during Corona
Oh,
concerning?
what a the self that was right before Corona.
Yeah.
Well, I would definitely tell that younger self, um, give more time to slow it down and take care of myself, and consider reworking my lifestyle a little bit to involve less travel to and from the office, to take more time to maybe start like I do here at home now, my day a little later, and do something for myself, maybe a bit of yoga, take some coffee with my husband before we both start to work on our computers, and don't rush as much. What is the point? And that there is more important things than being out there all the time, going into stores, buying things, running around, keeping life a little simpler.
So, you talked a lot about slowing down, and I find it so interesting because slowing down is also such an important part in like EFT.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, yeah. We can't notice things about ourselves, because we tend to go through things like lightning. Even our brain does. Yeah, our limbic system. It just jumps so quickly into our actions. So slowing it down is such a lovely way to track our own process and become more aware of it. And how can we do anything with something that we're not yet aware of? So I love the slowing down. Yeah.
So, what are your advice? What are your experience on how to slow down?
hmm Um, well, I still think that it's not an individual decision to slow down, or an individual process. We are creatures of attachment, and we are interpersonally regulated by others. From the moment we're born, we learn about the world, about ourselves, and about others' availability for us, right? From the moment we're born, some people say even before, if we cry, does somebody hold us? Does somebody respond? Or are we left? If we are happy, does somebody see us? But not if we cry. I know I have clients like that. So we become co-regulated by others from the moment we're born, and we learn so much about our worth, our value, what we're allowed to be or not be. So for me, slowing down is about security with ourselves and with others. Slowing down is about I can be me and I can listen to my signals on the inside, and I'm allowed to listen to them. They're okay. I don't have to hide them. I don't have to put away my real self. I can listen to my needs, but also I can share those with others. I can connect with others from that place of health and security, and I can make slowing down an interpersonal thing as well, where I can share that I want to do that with others, like we just did. And then we affirm each other and we have smiles and we talk about the beauty of slowing down and the safety we can have by sharing those things. Makes it a stronger thing we can do for ourselves. So I'm always thinking about the internal and the interpersonal, even with slowing down, that we share that idea and we become more okay with it because we receive support and encouragement. Mhm.
I love your answer because it's so much about accepting also these parts which are so
Mhm.
There's so little time for like negative emotions, for like actually slowing down.
Yes, and also I just want to say it doesn't mean it's so simple and easy to slow down. I might have what you mentioned as negative emotions. I might start with some anxiety,
Mhm.
uh, which is, of course, a fear response. Like, will I get everything done? What are people going to think of me if I don't get all these emails done, and find just the right way to respond to these requests with the right wording? Um, is that going to be okay? What will people think of me? Will they still want me to come and be their therapist or be their trainer? Um, if I slow down and listen to my own inner self and I pace myself differently and I don't just anxiously react to everything around me, will that be okay? There will be some fear, right? So there is something vulnerable and risky about listening to ourselves because we have to find out if that feedback loop that we create with the world, what that will be like, what we will do with that, what reaction will we receive.
That's lovely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having the thought of therapist being like a role model, like
Mm-hmm.
people who can show how to actually slow down, how to accept negative emotions, how to um, still be loving no matter how dark,
Mm-hmm.
deep things are going.
Yes. Well, I think you're bringing up something really excellent, which is even with clients in EFIT, the Therapeutic Alliance, the relationship with the therapist is the first place that our clients
Mhm.
experience that role modeling, as you called it,
Mhm.
something new they may not have experienced before, a slowing down, right? A kind, loving other, because it takes courage to go into those dark, scary places, those unfamiliar places. I think Sue has a beautiful word for it. I want to find frightening, alien, unacceptable emotions sometimes. We can't go there alone. We need a therapist or another attachment figure, ideally, but sometimes it needs to first be the therapist to help us go into that frightening, alien, unfamiliar territory, who grounds us, who stays with us, and helps us face those things because we can't do it on our own. And for many clients, it's never been safe to go there. And so everything is still inside and feels wrong, shameful, not okay to experience. Yeah.
Totally, I totally agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned attachment figures, and there might be some readers who don't know what attachment actually means. Like, how
Yeah.
would you describe it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had clients, for instance, say to me, can you give me a book on attachment theory so I can understand what it is?
Mhm.
And I will, of course, give people reading material, but I smile inside of myself because I know attachment is not something you can just read. You need to experience it. And so we speak a lot in EFIT, in EFT in general, about corrective emotional experiences, which are not just head knowledge, they are deeply felt and reprocessed new experiences of attachment, sometimes first ever. So, the way I like to help my clients and the way we do in EFT, whether individuals, couples, or families, to understand attachment is by giving them a felt sense of what it is from the moment that we have our first contact with them by email or phone, and certainly as we meet with them the first time. And we are that other that makes space for them to start to access who they are. But we don't just do that, we also help them to zoom out and make meaning of what they're experiencing. So there's not just, oh, I had such a nice feeling, my therapist was so kind and loving. It's also, my therapist helped me to feel safe enough then to understand what was happening in the session, to understand what happens for me in my world, to understand my blocks to attachment, and even how much it makes sense that I'm blocked in my attachment. My therapist is helping me to start to feel safe enough to understand how it is to lean into another person to help me get to know myself. Yeah, and there's a lot of ways in EFIT that we do it. We have so many micro and macro interventions and tools to do that.
Do
Mm-hmm.
you have a what's your most favorite intervention?
Oh, I love that question because I am going to pick one. So on the macro level, the tango, the EFT tango is absolutely my favorite. It is just beautiful. And don't get me started because I will talk forever about that. And we do tango workshops just on tango. I'm doing one for you
Yeah.
a day. And then we use the tango for individuals, couples, and families. So that's my favorite macro intervention. And in terms of where I really always want to go with every client is the enactment. Because to me, there is a difference between our clients sharing with us something vulnerable and frightening and sharing it with a family member, a partner, a part of the self or the younger self, or with somebody from their past, might not even be alive anymore. I've had clients enact with their favorite pet, with their religious figure, their higher power God, with their a parent or grandparent who is no longer alive, across the board. And what enactments do is they actually are the corrective emotional experience. You may know this yourself. You tell a person about something that has hurt you, and it's not that hard. It's still hard. You go directly to the person who has hurt you, let's say, and you say, when you said that, I need to share with you how hurt I was. I need to know, that you're not upset at me and that we can work this out together. Is way more vulnerable and risky. For somebody to say, the older to the younger self, not just the therapist, to say, that little you did not deserve to get hurt like that. That little you needed support and should not have been abused. That little you learned that he is bad, but that little you isn't. Can you feel that right now as I say that? And their client will say, yes, I really feel it. And then comes the big moment. Can that adult part of you that feels that now imagine that little you yourself? And could you imagine turning or even close your eyes? What's that little you? Is that little part of you sitting there? Can you imagine turning and saying that yourself to that part of you? Oh boy, can you even imagine the difference? That older, wiser self that is able to step back a little takes that little part on their lap and says, you are not a bad child. You should never have been treated that way. That is the fault of your abusers, but you are worthy of love. Come here and let me help you start to feel safe in the world. It's so different from talking about it with the therapist. Can you feel it?
I can totally feel it. I'm getting goosebumps from listening.
Yeah.
Because there's so much compassion, and I totally understand like having a corrective emotional experience.
Yeah. It just there's actually rewiring of the brain. But then my second favorite is we have to do something else after the enactment, which is to, of course, what was that like to hear that for that child? What's happening with the child? Like enactments with couples or families, we close the loop and we process it. And then we do the last move of the tango, which is so important. That's integration of the new. We take for granted often that our clients understand what they've just done and how important it is. But what's amazing to me is how quickly clients just move on and they haven't consolidated that corrective emotional experience sufficiently. They haven't spent enough time being explicitly aware of what they've done and noticing the new emotions, noticing the new of it, so that it can be really taken in and integrated. We call that often just positive psychology. We need to hang out in the new, the positive. So then I would say, wow, so that's very different. You have actually been, without knowing it, trying to get that little part of you to be good enough, always trying to be upset at the little part for being bad. And what you did now is so different. You embraced that part and felt compassion, and you started to tell that part of you that you're not bad, that you're not a bad person, that you are not shameful, that wasn't your fault. And by this time, you're not really saying it's a younger or older, it's just the self integrating, right? That is so different from what you told me that you normally do, which is to be harsh with yourself or ignore yourself or whatever it might be, right? Do you notice that? How is that different for you? Do you notice if you feel something different to yourself? Do you notice if you feel some new emotions, right? And so you kind of compare the old pattern with the new corrective cycle and throw your weight behind it. So that is a really important intervention too that comes after the enactment.
So beautiful, and I can see the power within words and emotions.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yes. Because EFT and EFIT is a fairly focused model. So we are not as, we're very Rogerian, but we also speak a fair bit because we have a path that we know we're on, and we want to help our clients stay on that path. So sometimes we may talk quite a bit to keep the focus. Other times we may step back and ask those open, evocative questions, make space for the client to discover the new emerging experience. But we're always aware of where we're heading, so we don't allow our clients to move in all kinds of different directions. So words are very, very important in EFIT.
So beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Before you were already talking about negative emotions, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about depression and how
Yeah.
like it
Oh,
can
yeah.
be either like EFT or EFIT.
Mm-hmm.
What are your
Yeah.
experiences on that?
Depression is a huge presenting issue in our individual clients, actually also for couples and families. But if we speak of EFIT, we think of Barlow's unified protocol, which is that there are just a few ways clients present in this world. PTSD being part of it, but depression and anxiety are almost universal in mental health distress. And they are usually comorbid too, so that they occur together and can be treated together. But depression, I feel, is the hallmark of mental health distress. When I think of depression and attachment together, which is how I view depression through the attachment lens, so that it becomes so clear what we can do with it, I think about loss of safety, loss of dignity, loss of worth, loss of love, loss of care, loss of attachment, safe attachment. Um, Unlovability comes from that. And a lot of helplessness often, a lot of helplessness in the depressed person, that their sense of agency, that they can reach for what they need in the world and will receive it, has been taken away from them. So they get into a feedback loop of learned helplessness, perhaps, of unworthiness. And it becomes so difficult for them to reach to get their needs met, if not impossible. They've learned a view of self that they're unlovable. They may have learned a view of others that others are neglectful or hurtful and harmful, but sometimes just plain neglectful. And when they feel unworthy and helpless, it is so hard to get out of that feedback loop, which creates more depression, isolation, self-isolation, perhaps walking around in the world, but emotionally isolated, not reaching. And so depression becomes its own vicious circle. Does that make sense?
It totally does make sense. It's like a little loop. It
It is
gets
a little loop.
bigger.
Absolutely. Right. And we come and we get into that loop and help our clients with it.
So what do you say on what should a therapist be aware of or have like a special focus if it comes to depression?
Well, when our clients come in from the very first session on, we are noticing so many things. We're noticing their stories that they tell us, which is kind of content. And they're very important because they give us the context of the client. And we're also noticing, how do they present themselves in the session? What is their level of affect? Are they flat? Are they shut down and have a hard time expressing themselves? Do they speak very fast and anxiously and are quite disorganized in how they speak? How do they relate to us? So do they look at us? Do they let us in? Or do they speak with very little affect and very little language, and there's a lot of silence? What are they telling us about themselves just by the way they are? So I'm noticing those things, and I draw my clients out and I start to validate as I hear their attachment history and their stories. I start to develop the film with them, I call it. The Polaroid or the old-fashioned dark room, and allow the photograph to develop. And I start to ask about the themes of connection and what they got and what it was like for them. And I start to help them to kind of see the exquisite logic of how little hope and they have of connection, how helpless they feel. So I start to help them right away with any shame they might have by helping them to see that from my point of view, their depression makes complete sense. Why would they not be depressed if whenever they needed something, nobody was there? And if they did need something, they would get hurt perhaps and shamed, or they would get abused. So I start to help them to see that it makes sense that they're depressed. The other thing I'm very careful to do is to make sure I am very different from what they're used to. So I make sure I am the opposite of all those things. Not to go over the top, and get anxious myself, hopefully, and get too pushy with that. But what I do is I show deep interest in their world. I grab any moment when I feel touched by something they say, and I show them I'm affected by them. I let them know that I am different, that I want to be an attachment figure for them, a transitional one, by being interested in their world, not being neglectful, not being dismissive, being compassionate, so that they can start to feel felt by me, and I can start to put a little light on that dark place, and so we can go in there together. Because they cannot go into that place unaccompanied. They need that new other type of person who is there, who does care, to walk there with them.
So tell me, have you always been so compassionate and so loving, or have you learned it? And if you've learned it, how did you learn it?
Oh gosh, to this day, I'm not always compassionate, loving. You ask my husband, you ask either of my daughters, and they would tell you, no, she's not always compassionate and loving. I'm not always even compassionate and loving with myself all the time. I don't know if it's possible that we're always that way. And I grew up with some compassion, but I didn't grow up with as much compassion and lovingness as, would be ideal. So what has helped me is truly that this EFT model is so universal. It touches the heart of what it's about, that the more that I use this model, the more I embrace it, the more it also changes me. Because it's really impossible to use this model and not feel it ourselves, if you know what I mean. If we cannot really be for others this way and not start to have it sink in more and more into ourselves. So I'm growing with the model. I'm growing together. And when I'm compassionate with a client, I'm feeling the compassion inside of myself. Or the other way, if I'm speaking with a colleague and they help me be compassionate with myself about maybe how I was in a session, then I feel more settled and I can give that to the client. So I do think that the framework, that the depathologizing frame of attachment, and that our coping strategies are logical when given where we come from, is such a compassionate frame for all of us. It's hard not to start to take it in. But I must also tell you that I don't want to create some kind of a picture of me. I mean, I have gotten frustrated with clients. I've said things to clients I wish I hadn't said. I might have an anxious client and I would start to feel like, oh, I wish they would just settle down a little, this is like overwhelming to me and I'm very tired today, or an avoiding client like, oh, this is boring. How do I draw them out of themselves? Like, oh, end of the day, this is a hard session. I have all that too. It's not something we can always be.
If I may tell you the truth, it's so touching to hear you being so honest. And it's so helpful because it tells us that we're all learning.
We are all learning.
We're all in this together. And that's,
yes.
Thank you so much for sharing this. It's just so
Yeah, I think that's really important, that we cannot help clients if we're not human ourselves. And it also touches on self-disclosure. In appropriate ways, I will share my humanness with my clients.
It sounds that you're And it's so good and it's so important that you're normalizing
Hmm.
kind of negative emotions or troubles or struggles we're having.
Yes.
So good, because otherwise there's so much shame, which brings us back to depression. That's so
Yes.
what you're doing.
That's right. That's right. Yes. And the people struggling with depression, they also need to do the enactments that I was talking about earlier,
Mhm.
right? They often have a part that they often do feel a lot of shame. They feel shame maybe around being broken and not being as good as other people. You know, they might lie in bed in the morning, not able to get out of bed because they believe this world is a very rejecting world, that there's no place for them. So we have to bring those parts out. We have to not be afraid of what we call negative emotion and avoid it, right? And not to join with our clients in avoiding negative emotion. And if we can be a grounding, solid attachment figure, and if we have this, I always picture the tango on my shoulder here, whispering in my ear, telling me what to do and helping me feel more secure in my sessions, we can then help our clients go into those negative emotions and the pain of rejection, for instance. The pain of feeling always not good enough and rejected. So why would I get out of bed in the morning? Going into that rejection feeling, view of self another, I feel broken, feeling the pain and loss and sadness of it, and actually processing it, and maybe finding that other part that says, wait a minute, you know, it's true. I got really put down a lot. I was told I was broken, and I'm starting to realize that's very sad for me and very upsetting. And a part of me is starting to go, maybe that's not all true. Maybe a part of me is saying, wait a minute, you know, I deserve better. That was back then. And it's very sad to this day. I still live with that belief lying in bed when I don't have to anymore because my therapist is helping me to experience the pain of rejection, some anger, some healthy, positive anger, some sense of wanting to step out. So we must go into the painful emotions, but when we can trust the way we work with emotion, we can come through it, and it leads us to what we need. It leads us to what we need to do differently. And that's, I think, the most courageous part of being an EFT therapist. We all have these allergies to emotions. We're scared of them because we don't know what to do with them. Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to face negative emotions, how to overcome our fears when it comes to bigger emotions?
We tend to want to move away from these negative emotions. And I think about things like anxiety and anger, big ones. And we need to actually do the opposite of our impulse. We need to move towards them. Why do people need to have such big emotions? Let's take the big ones: anger, anxiety, frustration. Why are they needing to go so big? You probably have learned about secondary and primary emotions, which we more often now call reactive emotions, and core emotions, which I love. They're less technical and they're more evocative. Why do people need to have such reactive emotions and not able to be right in their core emotions, which of course are the ones we want to get to? That's where the needs are, the unmet needs. Well, it's because they haven't been heard, because they haven't had the chance to feel acknowledged and validated at that reactive level. And so they haven't been able to um, feel accepted enough to be able to really listen to those true emotions underneath. So we actually have to go in there and make sense of those reactive emotions. And the way we make sense of them is we see what they're about from the attachment lens. What is the attachment meaning of this anger? You know, it's about not being heard. It's maybe about violation. What is the attachment meaning of anxiety? It's about a constant panic of never feeling like I can reach anyone and will be caught in those moments. It's my alarm bell going off all the time because I don't know how else to reach somebody, and I need soothing. I need love. I need to know I'm okay. My anxiety is my way of having my alarm bell on to try and get that. So we need to give it to them by saying, wow, in this moment, I see how much you are really telling me about how upsetting those interactions this week were with those people in your life. I really hear how big they are. They're really big for you. I'm going to lean in. I want to help you with that. And then you might go into slowing it down by using the tango, which we're going to work on a lot in the training. And we're co-regulating that client with our voice, with our body language, and with the way we help create meaning out of what their big emotions are about, so that they can start to feel heard and they can settle in their bodies and don't have to be so big to be heard by us.
It really is about experience. It
It is
really
about experience.
feeling how
Yeah.
attachment might work and might heal.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have to grab people's hearts, not just their heads. Now, that being said, people come for all kinds of reasons. There is also the EFT framework is also very extremely well delineated, and I part of what I love about EFT is its exquisite logic. It's such a beautiful roadmap, and I think to describe also the flow of it from a kind of more cognitive level is very important also. It needs to make sense at both the experiential and the cognitive level, and that's actually integration, and that's what Move 5 of the Tango is about as well. So, you know, we capture people at all levels, and it all fits together at the end.
Was EFT and IFIT always like that? Because you've been one of the pioneers, so to say. You're one of students of
oh boy, has EFT ever grown, and has EFIT ever grown? It was the first time that I had contact with EFT was when I was part of the very first research study when Sue Johnson was a doctoral student, and this was her model that she developed by tracking and tracing what happens with couples as they make changes, hundreds of videos. And she's still that same relentlessly curious, powerful, brilliant woman that she was at that time. And the manual that we worked on, because I was one of the therapists in that very first study, was 20 pages. So in 1982, 83, I forget, there were 20 pages written on EFT in the whole world. Right? And it was not as in-depth. Yeah, I know. I mean, I can't find that original manual. I don't know where it went, but it's so interesting to see it, the growth. And part of what I believe really expanded EFT is in the late 80s, early 90s, Sue began to explicitly integrate Bowlby's theories of attachment. And that especially changed stage 2. It changed everything. But it's not just a cycle, not just cybernetics. It's way beyond cybernetics. It is about a deep sense of existential and wired in need to be connected and safe in this world, because we can't do it alone as mammals. And as she brought more of that in, the model just exploded into like Technicolor and 3 dimensions, and it just became so rich and so deep. And then it just keeps growing and becoming deeper and more special examples like attachment injuries, and then more on addictions and affairs. And especially, in my opinion, the Tango is brilliant and has made this model so accessible also to therapists, because it's a macro intervention that is absolutely bottom up. I love the infinity loop and the steps because it shows you what happens. But how do you do it? What happens? What's the process? So I think the growth in general has been just exploding in that way. And EFIT specifically, I remember, even before 2010, thinking to myself, if this model works so well for couples, it should work for individuals too. Why wouldn't it? I started tracking the 9 steps because that's all we had at the time, and seeing how we could put individual issues into those 9 steps. And it kind of worked pretty well. And I started training in EFIT in various countries, including Finland, Holland, at that time, especially in Europe, and I think a few other countries. Now there's way more countries in Europe I've taught EFIT. Croatia, Bulgaria, Italy, Holland, Finland, a few others. I forget, Belgium, I think. It's now, the Tango actually makes EFIT even more accessible to us as therapists. But yeah, I've been training EFIT for at least 10 years. And I love it. I just love the beauty of how cycles and reframes and
Mhm.
corrective experiences can happen even with one client in the room. You don't have to have two people for enactments to understand negative cycles. You don't need, you can have just that one client.
So what would you love people who are not therapists like think about EFT? What are like the words you would say if people think about EFT or if it they should have these words like in their head?
Um, Deeply humanistic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use an English word, parsimonious, which Sue uses, meaning it's efficient and
Mm-hmm.
gets you where you need to get.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Moving, very moving. That's it.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So, like one last question from my side.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend to either couples or individuals who are not therapists, but how can they still have like a little piece of this
Uh,
if it in their everyday life?
I think um, I think what we need to say is it is actually wired into us. It is normal for all of us to need connection. It is, as Sue would say, it's like oxygen. We starve without it. Babies die without holding. People get depressed without closeness. It's oxygen to us. Please, let's all be aware that this is the most healthy need we have. And if we haven't had enough of it or we learned it was not healthy, please reach out and find out that it is the healthiest, most life-sustaining thing that we can have. It's oxygen to our hearts and souls, is connection and attachment.
I think that's so beautiful because it's all about being aware and opening up and allowing
Yeah, yeah,
ourselves.
that's it. That's it. And if that's really hard for you to be able to be okay with or find, it's all right to go for help as long as it's EFT.
Yeah, that's right. So, is there anything else you would like to say here in this little interview?
Well, I would like to say to the group in Germany that's going to be taking this training that I'm very excited to come and meet with you, even though I'm not physically going to be there. And I'm very sad about that. I was really looking forward to coming to Hanover, but I'm so excited to see all of you, to meet all of you, to do this training with you. I'm really looking forward to it. I think we'll have a rich experience via Zoom, and that's going to be in September. I can't wait. Oh, and I guess I would like to say if the book is already out, this one,
Mm-hmm.
to read the first 5 chapters in German. Homework.
Homework. I can recommend it too. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Yolanda, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experiences. There's, it's so, I'm just so filled with joy. It was like, or it is a pleasure to talk with you. I'm looking forward to see you in September.
Yeah.
Oh, just
Well, I want to thank you, Sharon.